Alrighty. This is podcast 11, and for this one, we are going to turn to the past, or more precisely, how the past is managed. Because history, as we see it today, isn't just remembered, it's marketed, curated, and sometimes contested. In these two readings that we went over, they explore how memory itself becomes a battleground. Both ask a simple but urgent question: who gets to control the story of where we live, and what happens when people refuse to let that story stay comfortable? Okay, well, let's start in Fayetteville, Arkansas. In 2020, during the wave of Black Lives Matter protests, students at the University of Arkansas began using the hashtag #BlackAtUArk to share their experiences of racism on campus. Their posts weren't just stories, they were receipts, documenting daily microaggressions, racist jokes, and institutional neglect. At the same time, attention turned to a statue in the heart of campus, a memorial to Senator J. William Fulbright, a former university president and U.S. lawmaker. Fulbright's name is famous for the global exchange program that bears it, the Fulbright Scholarships. What many didn't know or prefer to forget is that he also was a staunch segregationist. He opposed the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and even helped author the Southern Manifesto defending Jim Crow. So when students demanded the statue be removed, the state legislature stepped in almost overnight to pass Act 1003, an act making it illegal to move or alter historical monuments on public land. The law claimed it was to protect public peace, but what it really protected was the status quo. Faced with this wall of bureaucracy, the students and their allies did something brilliant. They decided to forget. That sounds strange, yeah, but Dion and his co-authors called this the rhetoric of forgetting. It's not about erasing history, it's about refusing to honor the parts of it that uphold oppression. They argue that forgetting can be an anti-racist practice, a way to shift attention, to remember differently, to center the stories that have been buried under the statues and plaques. In this case, forgetting meant reimagining Fulbright's legacy as part of a much larger pattern of anti-blackness on campus. It meant turning the hashtag #BlackAtUArk into what the authors call an oppositional archive, a living collection of voices that disrupts the university's official memoryscape. Through social media, students created what the authors describe as deep ecological world-making, using digital space to grow a new public memory that refuses the old racist roots. Now, Dion and his team also connect this idea to the idea of wake work. From scholar Christina Sharp, the practice of acknowledging the ongoing afterlife of slavery and how it still shapes everyday life. To forget Fulbright then wasn't to pretend racism was over, it was to wake up how it continues. The movement didn't topple the statue, the law made sure of that, but it changed its meaning forever. Now, anyone who Googles Fulbright statue finds not just a smiling monument to a statesman, but a record of Renaissance, hashtags, and history of students saying enough. Even the university's attempt to recontextualize the statue with a QR code backfired. Its neutral language about the Fulbright paradox was drowned out by the louder, more honest narrative built online. For Dion and his co-authors, this is the point. Forgetting isn't absence, it's agency. It's a refusal to let power dictate how the past gets remembered. But what happens when those in power, universities, cities, institutions, commodify memory itself? That's where Jesse Ohl's essay, the one we're looking at, takes us next. All starts with a story from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where the University of Alabama and the city around it have long had a strained relationship. Locals joke that the university has a wall around it, not just a physical one, but a cultural barrier that separates the white, wealthy university from the surrounding black community. He describes this as the town-gown divide, the tension between universities, the gown, and the cities that host them, which is the town. But all pushes further. He argues that this divide is now being fueled by what he calls the memory economy. And here's what that means. Remembering has become profitable. Cities and campuses compete to turn their histories, especially the racial histories, into tourist attractions. Museums, memorials, walking tours, and historical markers are all part of what Ohl calls memory entrepreneurship. He points out that civil rights tourism is booming, bringing millions in revenue. Cities race to join the U.S. Civil Rights Trail while universities rebrand themselves as sites of progress by renaming buildings, removing statues, or promoting their diversity programs. But behind the good intentions lies a question: who gets to own that memory? Well, all argues that both towns and universities treat history like property, something to be bought, sold, and branded. In Tuscaloosa, for instance, the city highlights events like Bloody Tuesday, a 1964 protest against segregation, while the university markets its own milestones, like the desegregation of its campus. Both stories are part of the same history, but each side tells its version separately, protecting its brand. In the process, the real human connections, the shared pain, the overlapping struggles get lost behind walls of marketing, tourism, and institutional self-interest. Still, all doesn't leave us in despair. He ends it with a challenge. If capitalism is going to shape how memory works, then scholars, teachers, and activists have to learn to intervene in that process. He calls this being a memory entrepreneur, not in the corporate sense, but in the creative one. It means taking control of the stories we tell, curating them ethically, and ensuring that those who've been erased have a place in the narrative. For all this starts in the classroom. He asks what it would mean to teach students not just to study history, but to build it, to analyze who's profiting from certain memories, to connect local struggles to global ones, and to create spaces where truth can thrive even within the constraints of a capitalism system. Now, if we put these two essays side by side, a pattern emerges, which you can see. So Dion and his colleagues show us what it means to forget strategically, to resist oppressive memory by creating alternatives, and Ole shows us what it means to remember strategically, to claim ownership over memory before it's sold back to us as a product. Will both remind us that the past isn't past, it's alive in our landscapes, our institutions, and our algorithms. When students at Arkansas demanded the right to forget Fulbright, they weren't erasing history, they were insisting on a new one. And when Ole calls on us to become memory entrepreneurs, he's asking us to protect that new history from being bought and repackaged as another university marketing campaign. So basically, the whole gist: history isn't fixed, it's a living argument. Every statue, every street name, every plaque or protest is a site of negotiation over what counts as truth and who gets to tell it. Forgetting, it turns out, can be a form of freedom, and remembering, when done critically, can be an act of justice. Yeah, cue the outro. It's 11.